Congrats, you made it to week 5. You're on a roll. Before we get started, I do want you to get out an empty tracking tool, print one off or have one from this week because we will be referring to a couple of items throughout the session. Also, print off the handout or have it pulled up digitally so you can refer to the handout from week 5. And have your planning guide so you can refer to that for servings as we speak to portions and how you're going to plan for your tracking tool. Let's get started. Today, we're focused on your tracking tool and how you'll count combination foods and other food items. There have been some questions that we've had throughout the program so far, so I wanted to hit on those. First being, let's look at your tracking tool. If you can go to the calcium group, you're going to see here that there are a certain amount of boxes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but one of the calcium boxes is blue, and our graphic designer did that for a special reason. Because if you look at calciums over here and you see the serving, it's in a 200 milligrams. So each box is 200 milligrams. So if you look at a whole cup of milk, there's more than 200 milligrams in a whole cup of milk. So those boxes are only showing 200 so we can keep tally. Looking at the calcium-rich foods, you'll see adults 19 to 50 years old are recommended to get 5 servings or 1,000 milligrams. So they wouldn't mark off all the boxes, where 50 plus would mark off 6 servings. And remember, the boxes are in 200 milligrams, where that's different than your meal planning guide, where I've put it in normal serving sizes. We may change that in the future, but just know there's a difference there. The next question I had was about fat and how to check fat. There are 3 areas where we could have confusion. Meat, like this fatty piece of meat right here, or maybe ribs. For every ounce of this type of meat we're eating, we probably should be marking a fat box or a fat portion. So if I've had 3 ounces of ribs, then I should mark 3 fat boxes for that as well. Also, preparation of your food. If you're adding olive oil or I'm sauteing my meatballs and I had to put quite a bit of oil in there so they don't stick, I should be counting fat portions for that as well, so marking those boxes. And the other item is cream sauces. So if you're eating something that has a creamy mixture, maybe the crab meat that was in the flounder, the stuffed flounder we had at base camp, had kind of a creamy mixture around it, I would have marked an extra fat for any creamy mixture, or risotto, or some of your casseroles that have a creamy mixture. Let's mark an extra fat.
So say you're at the smoothie bar and you are wanting a smoothie, but you're wanting to keep in mind the daily recommendation for total added sugar. Come on over. Let's look at the sugar content. So there is 37 grams of sugar in this smoothie. And you're thinking to yourself, that is over the total recommendations. However, that is not taking into account added sugar. This is looking at fruit. Fruit contains fructose. So you do not need to be worried of that number. This is a choose wisely smoothie, and so you can be confident that you are making a good decision. So there's another common question surrounding a popular snack, and that is yogurt. So let's take a look at yogurt. So let's take a look at this yogurt. We can see that this product has total carbohydrates, and then below that we see dietary fiber, total sugars, and this product actually contains the new nutrition label where it says included added sugars. Now we know that this product has carbs from other sources, but because we're wanting to make sure we are staying below those recommended guidelines, we're going to focus on the included added sugar. Let's take a look at an item that is definitely added sugar. So you're wanting to maybe add this in some of your iced coffee, so you do 2 pumps. Well, you take a look back and you see that 2 tablespoons is about 23 grams of added sugar. If you are a female, you've nearly hit your total recommendations for the day.
What's most important about tracking is it makes you more aware. So get your tracking tool out. We're going to break down this salad, that's the Let's Practice salad on your handout. So when I see 2 cups of spinach, when I look in my planner, I see that 2 cups of leafy greens equals 2 servings of veggies. Strawberries at half a cup, well that's not a whole portion of strawberries if we look in our planner. So let's see if we have any other fruits. Yes, we have dried cranberries at 2 tablespoons, and 2 tablespoons of dried fruit equals 1 fruit. So truly, we have a little bit more than 1 fruit here. So we could say 1.5, you could just say 1 fruit and mark off your 1 fruit box, 2 veggies at this point, and feta at 1 ounce is 1 protein. So if we looked into our meal planning guide, you would see on your protein, 1 ounce of feta cheese is 1 protein, so we can mark a protein. Slivered almonds, it could go into the fat or the protein, and 1/4 a cup, that's about palm size. We could definitely call that a fat portion. I typically like to use almonds as a fat portion so I can save the protein for other pieces of meat. Then we have the cranberries like I mentioned, so that's again the fruit that I've already talked about. Chopped onion, there's only 1 tablespoon, so there's not enough there to call it a non-starchy veggie. So we'll just kind of call it as like a hamburger has a slice of tomato or a piece of lettuce. There's not enough there to call it a serving of veggie, but we do have that with spinach. Balsamic dressings at 2 tablespoons, which makes 2 fats. Next we discussed pot roast. We also looked at chicken and cheesy rice dishes with broccoli in them and how we would count those, because they don't look like the natural plate method where half of your plates are non-starchies or fruit, 1/4 of it is carbohydrate, and 1/4 of it is protein, much like our plan that we have with Choose Wisely. When we do combination foods like pot roast, it's kind of mixed together, so we gave some tips about when you're making pot roast to have a non-starchy on the side. Maybe you make green beans or roasted Brussels sprouts, or you use roasted butternut squash instead of potatoes, not in the roast, but maybe roasted outside. That would lower your carbohydrate amount, so you could have more of the butternut squash compared to potatoes. With the cheesy chicken and rice, we know with that cheesy or creamy sauce, we probably need to mark a fat or an extra fat. Anytime we see a cream sauce, we should be thinking about this probably has extra fat in it. With the cheesy chicken and rice, our tip there was to chop up broccoli fine or mushrooms or onions and add more of that to the casserole for more non-starchy veggies. Get your tracking tool out. We're gonna look at grilled cheese. So when we see this grilled cheese, we see that it's 1 slice of bread that's been halved, so it's half of a grilled cheese, with cheese in the middle. So we might call that 1 ounce, maybe more than 1 ounce. So what would this be called as a lunch if we were to put it on our tracking tool? We first would write 1 slice of bread. Then we would write 1 ounce of cheese. Then we would mark the cheese as a protein, also a calcium, and we would mark that bread or that slice of bread as 1 carbohydrate. So we would check the box for 1 carbohydrate. Unless it's a thicker bread. If you have a thicker bread, a wider bread, then we know we should probably mark it for 2 carbohydrates. Like a Subway bread that's really tall, that would be one we want to mark for more. Let's look at pizza. So this slice of pizza, this could be about 15 grams of carbs, which is 1 serving of carbohydrate, so we would mark the box for 1 serving of carbohydrate. When we looked in the cafeteria at base camp, we noticed that the pizza was pretty thin, so we would still mark it for 1 carbohydrate. But if you're eating at Pizza Hut maybe, where it's thick crust, and we know it's more than a slice of bread, because each slice of bread is 1 carbohydrate, then we should probably mark it for more carbohydrates. I also see cheese on the pizza, so I would mark 1 protein for that. Unless it has some meat, you can mark more for the ounces of meat. And then if we have veggies, we can mark a veggie if there's enough to put as a veggie serving, which would be a 1/2 cup, which would be a lot. We would also suggest you have a non-starchy veggie on the side, like a nice side salad. That would make this pizza complete. Make sure you mark fats, because we know that there's fats in the cheese, and the meat if you have a fatty meat like a sausage or a pepperoni. So let's think about trail mix now. If you had 1/4 a cup of trail mix, which is about palm size of trail mix, and it had mixed dried berries, nuts, seeds, maybe a few M&Ms. If you see it in base camp, we put a few M&Ms in there, but they're mini. So we would say that that might be 1 to 2 fat, because we've got the nuts and seeds, and then 1 fruit. If we have enough dried fruit to equal about 2 tablespoons, we can call that a fruit as well. Be careful though, a lot of dried fruit adds sugar. If it has added sugar, then it's really just a candy-coated fruit dessert. So if it does have sugar on it, like your pineapple typically does, or cherries might have sugar coated on them, dried cherries, look at the back of the package to see if they've added sugar to it. you're already going to see a higher carbohydrate because dried fruit is concentrated and has a lot of carbohydrate, but it's natural sugars, unless they've added sugar in the ingredient list. Be careful about added sugar on your dried fruit. Some dried fruit can be candy coated, almost like a dessert. So be careful and watch out when you look at the ingredient label. You're going to see sugar in the ingredients if they've added sugar. Remember, we know that the total carbohydrates will be a little bit higher because dried fruit is concentrated, and so it will have a higher carbohydrate from that natural sugar. If you see added sugar on there, then you're going to need to mark a carbohydrate as well. And we ended the session with a chat about rebooting. When we feel overworked, our mood is not regulated, we don't feel good about our day, we don't feel good about the vision and the strategy because we're burnt out. And that's important to recognize because it lowers our immune system as well. It lowers our productivity. So we want you to take a moment to reboot. Do some self-care where you have moments to take a walk and do nothing but breathe deeply. When we breathe deep, it tells our body, you're not in fight or flight. You're not shallow breathing, short, shallow breathing. Instead, you're taking a deep breath in and relaxing the body and telling the body, you're calm, you're not under stress. So take a deep breath right now and find your reboot. And your mantras for the week. Everyone's journey is different. I will tune out comparisons. I only fail if I quit. And I am creating a life that I feel good in. At the end of the session, we took a moment of self-care and we stretched. Basic stretches with deep breaths to tell our body that we're calming, that we're taking care of ourselves, and we're not in fight or flight. We relaxed ourselves during that moment. I want you to take a moment during these last parts of the video to welcome this with me as well. First, we know that we lean our head forward quite a bit, so that's hard on the upper spine. Puts a lot of pressure and weight on it, so I want you to retract your chin back. You can almost make an L with your hand right here too to teach yourself where you're supposed to be. Once you're retracted, then you're ready for your stretches. Your neck stretches is where we'll start. So I want you just to gently lean your head back, and you can touch your temple with your right hand if you're leaning right. And just go until you feel the stretch. Take deep breaths through it. Hold it for 3 seconds and go to the other side. So I retract first, then I lean, and I touch my temple just to tell myself, give it a good stretch, but I don't push. Next, we relaxed our shoulders, and then we pulled up our shoulders and held next to our ears, and then we pushed down our shoulders. We didn't just relax our shoulders, we depressed as well. This is great for range of motion and strength. It's also great for posture. Pull up again, like a shrug. Make sure you're retracted in your breathing, and depress your shoulders. Now let's roll our shoulders back. Anytime we're seated at our desk for too long, we start to look like this, and our shoulders begin to round. We want to teach them to go back, and so let's roll our shoulders back in circles. This just feels good for posture and range of motion. All these can be done at your desk. That's why I'm seated, to show you you can do them in a seated position. And we did them at the session in a seated position. Next, I want you to make a W with your hands or your arms. And then I want you to squeeze your shoulder blades back, like you're pinching them together. And then come forward again, relax your shoulders, making a W. Now squeeze again. Make sure you're breathing through these. W, and back. Last one. Squeezing my shoulder blades together. And this last one is for range of motion and activities of daily living. Anything that deals with scratching your back, snapping your bra together, anything behind you that we lose our range of motion in shoulders. If you've had a shoulder or joint surgery, then you want to be careful with this one, or maybe just omit this one. So I'm gonna take the back of my hands and I'm gonna place them right on the top of my buttocks here. And then I'm gonna act like I'm rubbing my back, but keeping my hands somewhat overlapped the whole time. I'm gonna go as high as I can, and then I'm gonna go back down. And do it again, about 5 of these. This feels good. It's great for your shoulder girdle. It's also great for range of motion, strength, and posture. I suggest you do some of these and look back into the video to see how you do them if you need a recap. Have a great day.